Hello everyone, this is Miss Leek coming at you from my classroom. This is the first edition of First Chapter Friday. The book that I chose to highlight, a student talked about it this week. I love this book, and so I thought that's going to be my first one. And it is called The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. This is historical fiction. I loved the audio and I loved how it was written, so reading it as well, both of them. And a couple of things I love about this are the characters. The dad is so funny. The dad and mom, their relationship is, I thought it was really real, but also really funny because the dad is funny. The oldest son who experiences some problems in this book, that was really realistic. And so when I read the book, I thought this is realistic fiction. Also, Birmingham, 1963, if you know anything about civil rights, you'll know a really dark moment that happens in that year, and that is talked about in this book. And it was very enlightening for me. I thought the author did a great job with the perspective of talking about that. It's very specific. I don't want to tell you because it might be a spoiler, but I just thought that it was really, really, really well written. So now I'm going to do a 5-minute sample. I wanted you to hear the audio. I think the reader does awesome. So I am going to do this 5-minute sample, and then that's your First Read Fridays. It's the First Chapter Fridays. I recommend the book if you get an opportunity to read it. Okay, here we go with the audio.
The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, by Christopher Paul Curtis. And you wonder why we get called the Weird Watsons. It was one of those super-duper cold Saturdays. One of those days that when you breathed out, your breath kind of hung frozen in the air like a hunk of smoke, and you could walk along and look exactly like a train blowing out big, fat, white puffs of smoke. It was so cold that if you were stupid enough to go outside, your eyes would automatically blink 1,000 times all by themselves, probably so the juice inside of them wouldn't freeze up. It was so cold that if you spit, the slob would be an ice cube before it hit the ground. It was about 1,000,000 degrees below zero. It was even cold inside our house. We put sweaters and hats and scarves and 3 pairs of socks on and still were cold. The thermostat was turned all the way up and the furnace was banging and sounding like it was about to blow up, but it still felt like Jack Frost had moved in with us. All of my family sat real close together on the couch under a blanket. Dad said this would generate a little heat, but he didn't have to tell us this. It seemed like the cold automatically made us want to get together and huddle up. My little sister, Joetta, sat in the middle, and all you could see were her eyes because she had a scarf wrapped around her head. I was next to her, and on the outside was my mother. Mama was the only one who wasn't born in Flint, so the cold was coldest to her. All you could see were her eyes, too, and they were shooting bad looks at Dad. She always blamed him for bringing her all the way from Alabama to Michigan, a state she called a giant icebox. Dad was bundled up on the other side of Joey, trying to look at anything but Mama. Next to Dad, sitting with a little space between them, was my older brother, Byron. Byron had just turned 13, so he was officially a teenage juvenile delinquent and didn't think it was cool to touch anybody or let anyone touch him, even if it meant he froze to death. Byron had tucked the blanket between him and Dad down into the cushion of the couch to make sure he couldn't be touched. Dad turned on the TV to try to make us forget how cold we were, but all that did was get him in trouble. There was a special news report on Channel 12 telling about how bad the weather was, and Dad groaned when the guy said, "If you think it's cold now, wait until tonight. The temperature is expected to drop into record-low territory, possibly reaching the -20s. In fact, we won't be seeing anything above zero for the next 4 to 5 days." He was smiling when he said this, but none of the Watson family thought it was funny. We all looked over at Dad. He just shook his head and pulled the blanket over his eyes. Then the guy on TV said, "Here's a little something we can use to brighten our spirits and give us some hope for the future. The temperature in Atlanta, Georgia is forecast to reach..." Dad coughed real loud and jumped off the couch to turn the TV off, but we all heard the weatherman say, "the mid-70s." The guy might as well have tied Dad to a tree and said, "Ready, aim, fire." "Atlanta," Mama said. "That's 150 miles from home." "Willona," Dad said. "I knew it," Mama said. "I knew I should have listened to Moses Henderson." "Who?" I asked. Dad said, "Oh, Lord, not that sorry story. You've got to let me tell about what happened with him." Mama said, "There's not a whole lot to tell. Just a story about a young girl who made a bad choice. But if you do tell it, make sure you get all the facts right." We all huddled as close as we could get because we knew Dad was going to try to make us forget about being cold by cutting up. Me and Joey started smiling right away, and Byron tried to look cool and bored. "Kids," Dad said, "I almost wasn't your father. You guys came real close to having a clown for a daddy named Hambone Henderson." "Daniel Watson, you stop right there. You're the one who started that Hambone nonsense. Before you started that, everyone called him his Christian name, Moses. And he was a respectable boy, too. He wasn't a clown at all. But the name stuck, didn't it? Hambone Henderson. Me and your granddaddy called him that because the boy had a head shaped just like a ham bone, had more knots and bumps on his head than a dinosaur. So, as you guys sit here giving me these dirty looks because it's a little chilly outside, ask yourselves if you'd rather be a little cool or go through life being known as the Hambonettes." Me and Joey cracked up. Byron kind of...
Okay, so that was the first 5 minutes of the book. I highly recommend it. I hope that if you read it, come and tell me. I hope you really enjoy it. Okay, fabulous week ahead.